myself and my colleagues. My name is Lakshmi Neelakantan. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Oxford. I work primarily on the MindKind study, and we run a virtual young people's advisory group as part of the MindKind study. And we're just going to talk you through a little bit of the kind of adaptations we had to implement to run this entirely virtually. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Emily Bampton. She's the professional youth advisor on the MindKind study, and she coordinates and runs the virtual young people's advisory group. And I also have with me Blossom Fernandez, and she's the project manager who runs the entire MindKind study. She wears many hats, and she makes sure that everything runs well and on time, and yeah, all the project manager stuff. So it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting us today. I'll just briefly give you a background of the study, and then we'll go on to some of the learnings and challenges that we've been documenting while running the virtual YPAG. I'm just going to say YPAG because Young People's Advisory Group is a bit of a mouthful, so YPAG is what we call it generally, so I'm just going to use that term. So essentially, we recruited a YPAG as part of the MindKind study. The MindKind study is a feasibility study that's really a multinational study. It's coordinated primarily in the United States, and it has study sites in the UK, India, and South Africa. And so we are one of the study sites as part of the MindKind study. Essentially, it is a feasibility study of assessing whether we could set up a user-led global mental health data bank for young people, and if we could, then what would that data bank look like, and how would it operate? And there are primarily two study arms. There's a quantitative arm and a qualitative arm. Both essentially seek to assess young people's preferences for data governance and how mental health data should really be collected and used and stored as part of a mental health data bank. So as part of the quantitative study, participants download a MindKind app, and they share their preferences for data collection and use. And for the qualitative study, we run what's called deliberative democracy sessions, where we bring young people together to really assess their preferences for different data governance models, and which of these data governance models would be most suitable to be used in a mental health data bank. And so the interesting and the unique thing about the study is that each of these sites recruits and runs their own YPAG to make sure that the youth voice is centered and prioritized at the heart of the study. And each site also has a professional youth advisor. And of course, Emily in the UK is our professional youth advisor. And she feeds into the broader study decision making, but also runs and coordinates the YPAG sessions. So way back in March, when we were trying to recruit young people to the YPAG, we really wanted to try and get a representative group. And I think part of this arose from the fact that this is entirely virtual. And while that has its challenges, it also has presented a really great opportunity where we could get young people from all over the UK, and we had other flexibilities because we were doing it virtually that we wouldn't have had if we were doing it in person. So to try and get this representative group, we had quite an extensive recruitment campaign. We advertised on Twitter, Instagram. We personally wrote to and contacted many youth organizations. We also contacted organizations for underrepresented groups, such as Black Minds Matter, Black Thrive, and They See Minds. We also used our existing contacts to try and recruit young people of varied genders, ethnicities, disability statuses, and I think most importantly from all parts of the UK and not just from England. We had a very brief application form where we just asked young people to briefly describe their motivations for wanting to be part of this, the MindKind YPAG. We also had a long list and shortlist selection process where we tried to pick what we thought, the young people that we thought would be most suitable to help us get this project off the ground. It was actually quite a successful recruitment campaign because we received over 270 applications for 20 spots. And the YPAC started in March, and we had kind of a first iteration that lasted for 6 months, and we had an initial group of 20 young people who participated. And some of them have now left because of other commitments, and they're starting university and things. So now we have a second group of participants, advisors who've joined us from the long wait list that we had from our initial round of applicants, and who will now be guiding us on the project till the end of the project. That's next April. And it was just a really interesting process. It was really great to see the kind of interest that we had, and it was just really heartening to receive so many applications from young people who were keen to be part of a virtual YPAC. I'm now going to pass you over to Emily, who will take you through some of the learnings and the challenges that we've kind of documented as part of running this YPAC. Emily, just let me know if you're happy to.
Yeah.
For me to just operate the slides. Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lakshmi. Yeah, so the first bit of my section is about reasonable adjustments for members. So we asked in the application process if anybody had additional needs or disabilities that we'd need to make adjustments or that they would need additional support with. So we did come into running the sessions with a good base knowledge of what our participants needed. However, through the first few sessions, we did sort of realise that additional support would be needed for a lot of people. So an example of this is we had one group member who is autistic and dyslexic, who we sort of initially spoke to them about their needs, and we planned to use concrete language and provide some additional support, but we sort of swiftly realised that he needed other support. So we did things like helping him with his reading comprehension and in weekly drop-in sessions with myself. So from quite early on, I implemented post-meeting drop-in sessions where any of the participants could come along and go through homework, answer any questions, give feedback, or raise any issues they had sort of one-on-one with me in a meeting. And this worked really well for the additional sort of homework support that was required by this participant. We also started providing a pre-meeting sort of reading document for the sessions that are a bit more in-depth or are sort of quite new topics for the young people. So this is formatted for dyslexic readers and has offered support. And also building in sort of within sessions lots of time to recap materials, lots of space to pause and ask questions, and also participants able to private message my co-host. So I have a co-host in every meeting for safeguarding purposes, but also just to help with sort of any technical things that might come up. And this allows participants to private message that person, and they can bring up a question if they're not comfortable raising it themselves. We also had one participant who struggled with migraines. We have 2 10-minute breaks in our 2-hour sessions, but they thought they might need additional breaks, so they were encouraged to take those as and when, turn the brightness down on their screen, and also turn away if they needed to. Some sections of the presentations can just involve me talking and explaining things a lot, so it's not always necessary for them to watch. And lastly, for most of our members, to a certain degree, had anxiety about joining the group or shyness about communicating. We have a huge age range, sort of from 16-year-olds who are doing their GCSEs all the way up to sort of 24-year-olds who have left university and very much in the real world. So it was, I think, the age gap, as well as other things like being around new people, did make people hesitant to engage. So we encourage people to not have to use their camera if they didn't want to, and we set gentle targets like encouraging people to send sort of 2 messages per session to try and ease them into the process. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I'm just, yeah.
Fab. One of the other things that came up quite quickly was identity verification and eligibility. So initially, when we did the recruitment process, we weren't planning to collect ID or any really sensitive information beyond what we asked for in the initial application process from the participants. However, in the first meeting, it did appear that sort of visibly appear that a few of the participants maybe weren't in the age range or weren't eligible by way of actually not being in the UK. So we ended up having to come up with a sort of ID process where we didn't collect or store any of their data, but we did ask for people to view via webcam their information so we could check that they were eligible, and we did actually have 2 people leave because of that. We also realised that we sort of needed a safeguarding and sort of escalation plan for in meetings and also outside of meetings, if because these issues came up initially when we were in a meeting, in the first meeting. So we decided to put in place a plan that would mean if there was immediate risk to any of the participants or ourselves within a meeting, that a participant could be removed from the meeting. But if it was any other sort of safeguarding issue, then we would look at it after the meeting and discuss it with the wider team. Next slide, please. Thank you. And as I sort of touched on before, one of the main issues for me as a facilitator has been warming up the participants when they first came in and keeping them engaged throughout the process, encouraging them to share their ideas in all different ways and making it accessible for everybody regardless of how they like to interact. So we did have issues with some people just not completing homework, not speaking up in meetings at all, having their camera and audio turned off for the whole meeting, so us not really being able to gauge how they were doing in terms of understanding, but also in terms of their opinions, which is obviously why we want them there. So we started implementing lots of different capacity building strategies and engagement strategies. The main ones of these are polls. We do a lot of polls via Zoom to check in throughout meetings and also gauge gut reactions to different topics. Every single session I do an icebreaker. We were doing 2 truths and a lie, where I got each of the young people to present 2 truths and a lie, and then the others voted on it, and that was a really nice way of them getting to know each other. At the moment, the main one I'm doing is picking a meme. They get 6 memes and they get to pick a meme and tell us why that represents how they're feeling that day or that week, and we sort of do a bit of a check-in, which is nice. That's also nice to gauge how much they might interact in a session, and if they sort of would like to take a step back, that's quite a nice way of seeing what they're up for. Again, my drop-in hours I think have been quite nice. It's a low pressure way where they don't have to go out of their way to book in time with me. It's just there if they want to come along. Breakout rooms as well have been a huge help, especially towards the beginning of the process when people were quite quiet. I started putting them in pairs in breakout rooms and really took a significant amount of time actually to think about who would be best for them to be paired with, to sort of bring various people out of their shells, get the most out of people, and that really helped to build bonds in the group and make people a lot happier to speak up. And then again, yes, we set engagement targets as well for people to try and speak once a session and sort of interact in the chat at least sort of 2 or 3 times a session. Fab. Next slide, please. Yes, so finally, sort of other challenges that we've had. There were, especially at the beginning, a number of technical issues, as I'm sure we all had over the sort of Zoom period of our lives. But yeah, I couldn't view the chat for a very long time while using presenter mode. That has now been sorted. But one of the lovely things that did come from that is that now sort of by default, whoever's co-hosting with me will read out the chat. That's very helpful for like note taking after meetings, for people who are listening to the audio back who don't have to go and then refer to the chat. But also just makes it a lot smoother process in terms of interacting and facilitating for me. We also had some issues with distractions. We use Slack to communicate, and that was getting quite distracting. So the co-hosts have created a separate Slack so I don't hear the notification noises while I'm trying to present. Yeah, we also had issues around numbering participants. We do virtual circles where we number them and they go around for the icebreaker. So just making sure the numbers at the beginning of their names, not the end of their names. and other things like breakout room allocation, making sure they're all set up beforehand and that they have to log into Zoom, just sort of working out Zoom kinks. And then obviously the big one is Wi-Fi. We have participants are all over the country. Some of them have really, really poor Wi-Fi, so they do drop out a lot. So making it easy for them to catch up after sessions by sending out slides, notes, meeting recording, and also like allowing time for them to rejoin and that sort of thing is really important. And also my Wi-Fi can drop out sometimes, and putting in place things like having copies of my slides on Teams so someone can pick up, and having other options for the sessions to be able to continue regardless of if I drop out is really important. And other challenges, so I think the main one has been the delay in starting the YPAG. I wasn't in post from the beginning of the project, which meant the YPAG didn't get set up until later. So I think some of the group have felt like they haven't, and I've also felt personally that we haven't been able to have as much of an impact because we've been slightly behind the decision making in terms of our running of sessions. That has been slightly disheartening for the group, but explaining exactly what a feasibility and pilot study is, which again is something I wasn't really aware of before taking up the post because I'm not an academic and haven't really worked in this kind of environment before, and showing them what the decision making process is and being very transparent with the group about what they can and can't affect, but explaining that eventually whatever they say, regardless if it's incorporated into this study and this project, it will go on to hopefully inform latter versions of the study is really important. And then finally, just group dynamics, people getting to know each other, different personalities clashing is really expected. And again, with the large age range. So just making sure if something does happen that I've taken members aside, explained how their actions might have been or words might have been incorporated in a certain way, and addressing that in an appropriate way when it does come up. But luckily it hasn't happened too much. I'm going to pass you over to Blossom, who's going to talk about the recruitment for the study itself and how that's going at the moment.
Thank you, Emily. So just before I get into recruitment, I just want to emphasize, the great work that's been done to get the YPAG in place, because it's, it's informed our decision-making for recruitment. It's been really helpful to really implement youth voice, because that's been our main objective from the beginning. And Emily's been instrumental to that, to get them, to really open up, especially with young people as young as 16-year-olds, to then engage with older participants who are 24. So there's a real mix, and the recruitment itself has been a challenge because we've recruited from across the country, getting people from Scotland, Wales. We tried Northern Ireland, and I don't think it was that successful, but both Lakshmi and Emily really pushed to ensure that we have an inclusive and representative YPAG on our panel. And that is all to inform this study, which is an app-based study. This app, which is developed by Sage Bionetworks in the US. So the main aim here is that we want young people to download this app, for them to really think about their own mental health. So that is also what's driving this recruitment. So there is no real incentive here. It's just that, we are changing the future of mental health, because this app will give you an indication about your mental health, insights into your, your daily feelings. This is something we really want to encourage young people. Like, research is already changing so much. So recruitment for this type has been a bit of a challenge, actually, because without any incentive, we really have to push for this ad. So we want it to be seen by as many young people as possible across the country. So one of the challenges is, firstly, we know that it's only on Android. So, that somehow limits our group, but unfortunately, we haven't had the app for iOS yet. So just having Android somehow limits our group, but at the same time, I think there are a few, young people with Androids, especially university students. And we're really hoping that both university students, school students have access to this. But it's been really great when, youth networks share our posters or anything. And you might have seen this on Twitter a lot. Those of you who are, within our age group who are on Facebook will have seen the ads, even on Instagram. So, we're also welcome to any recommendations, suggestions. Our youth panel has been really helpful in that as well. Our next strategy is to target parents, because we've realized that parents are actually what got them into the youth panel, parents, teachers, so that is also our target audience. So recruitment is definitely, I think, something we need to think about going forward. And it's a critical aspect of this project because it also gets young people to think about mental health. So yeah, any suggestions are welcome. Thanks, actually. And I guess I just want to say thank you to our team, because it's not just Oxford. We have a team at Cambridge who are really helpful. They run the qual study. Hopefully next year we'll have more information on that. And yeah, been really helpful. Follow us on Twitter if you don't already. But thank you all for listening.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to stop sharing now so we can all see each other's faces and not just my screen.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you all for sharing that really useful and really interesting information around the kind of challenges and opportunities in which particularly kind of online platforms afford in enabling us to reach lots of young people from different regions, areas, and also kind of, really important, I think, around embedding that kind of youth voice into the development of projects and programs, platforms, anything. It's just so important when they are kind of the end users to involve them right from the beginning. So yeah, really, really value kind of what you're doing. I'm going to open up to everyone on the call now, if that's okay, and just see if anyone has any questions. So does anyone from the group have any questions that they'd like to ask the team here today? Amy, go for it.
Hi, thanks. That was really interesting, and I may have misunderstood, but so I know that you said that there was no sort of like reimbursement for the app itself, and that it's really important to target it in terms of what it can do for the mental health of the user. Was there reimbursement and support for the YPAG advisory group?
Yes.
Because obviously that seemed like a lot of time being given up by them for this. So I wasn't sure if I'd misunderstood at all. So just to ask whether that was something that was considered and sort of what form that took as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We probably should have popped a slide in at the beginning about that. But so we meet twice a month, so fortnightly for 2 hours, and then they can get set homework as well. It's usually no more than 2 hours worth of homework, and sometimes they don't get anything, and it's usually follow up around what we've discussed. They get paid £10 an hour for session attendance and homework, and that gets paid to them monthly. That was used in the recruitment. Like, we were very transparent about the fact that they'll be getting paid. I also really advocated for them actually getting sent money instead of vouchers because of how long this project is, and because as a young person myself, I would find it a lot more helpful to have money than vouchers, especially for a project like this. Yeah, was there another question there?
Just to add, though, that I think, yeah, absolutely, to second what Emily said, I think in the app study, there is no, kind of financial incentive to participate, and that's also partly kind of built into the research question we're trying to answer. Since it's a feasibility study, we want to assess if, absent of any incentive, is there kind of, buy-in from young people to participate as well. So just to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I just wanted to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. And a sneaky follow-up question, if I may. So are the advisory group members also piloting the app, or are they sort of separate to the study participants who are encouraged to download the app?
I can go first. In theory, yes, they're separate. We maintain that distinction between advisors and research participants, and we've tried not to mix those boundaries. So yes, while they have helped advise on various aspects of the study design and implementation, they themselves are not participants. Blossom, did you want to add any?
No, I think you answered that well. The participants, the YPAC participants, we want to, their feedback. So to reduce any bias in terms of using the app. So there was no incentive for them to use the app itself. Just that was kept entirely separate.
They were given the option to pilot the app when it was in beta testing, though.
Yes, so they also that reason they beta tested the app. So.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions from the group? I know I've got questions, but I'm opening it out to you guys before I jump in. Michael, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for a great presentation. I'm just interested in whether you could say a little bit more about what the homework entailed, and what kind of activities that involved, and whether there's, if somebody was going to do something similar, what some of the benefits for discussion were, whether there were any activities that seemed to aid discussion particularly well in the groups. Yeah, just if you could say a bit more about that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So the homework, it really depends on what we've covered, and we've sort of covered such a wide range of things. They've had input on governance models, the qualitative side of the study, all the way to like our recruitment strategy now and just helping us design posters. So it does depend on what we've worked on. Sometimes it is just finishing work from the session. So the last session I did with them, they actually did an online card sort activity through Miro, and they filled out sticky notes of their opinions based on prompts and then were asked to rank them. We ran out of time in the session, and also a lot of people weren't able to attend, so I set that as homework for them to spend another 30 minutes doing it in their own time. That's nice because I think it gives them time to reflect a bit more deeply without the constraints of being inside the session. We've also asked them to do things like work in teams and design example recruitment materials with us through any medium they like. So they were given the option to like make a TikTok video, make an Instagram post, make a poster that could go up in a school or university. When we were initially designing our recruitment materials, I'm trying to think what else. I also, particularly at the beginning of the group, and we just had our new participants integrate with the old group, so I've done this more recently as well, is to just get feedback around how they felt in the session, like how comfortable they felt, if there were any points where they didn't feel like they could jump in but they wanted to, how they found the breakout rooms, what their favorite part of the session was, what their least favorite part of the session was. And I do pay them. We do pay them for that time that they spend on feedback, because it is so helpful for me in particular as a facilitator. Have I answered everything that you asked? If not, please ask me something.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. So just a very quick follow-up from me. I think you did mention in the presentation that sometimes you had challenges with people not doing the homework. Was that really disruptive then when you came to the session, and I guess was that a persistent issue that you found that there were lots of people turning up that hadn't done the homework? Or
so generally it sort of has gone in waves. So at the beginning there was really high attendance, high participation in the homework. I give them a deadline to complete everything by, and I say, if you don't do it by this deadline, or let me know that you need an extension, then you won't be paid for the homework. It's a very difficult line to tread, because for some people they need someone to give them a bit of a, for lack of a better phrase, kick up the bum to do things, and for some people they genuinely have a lot going on in their lives and they just can't do it. So it's not mandatory that they complete the homework. I do ask them to let me know if they're not going to do it. That doesn't generally happen. But it's not too disruptive, because it's only really disruptive if we're doing multiple sessions on something and people don't catch up. But it's also, again, we don't pay them for catching up, because obviously then they could just not attend the session and say they've read the notes, and it's not the same if they're not there in the moment. So we send out the meeting recording, meeting notes and the slides after each session, so they have the option to catch up. But what I think has happened when people maybe haven't attended the first session, when we're doing a topic over sort of 2 or 3 or 4 sessions, it does mean they're then less likely to do the homework and participate later on. But there are just kind of waves, and if someone's particularly disconnected, I try and check in with them and see what's going on. And it's usually that they're going through their own mental health things, or they've just started university, or, you know, over the summer a lot of people were on holiday, and loads of the school children in particular just weren't checking their emails because they have no reason to check their emails when you're 16 and it's the summer holidays. So that definitely meant there were dips. I guess my approach to it is kind of being just quite chill and quite open to helping them catch up if they need to, and trying to be as perceptive of when people are struggling versus when people are like disconnecting.
That's really helpful. Sounds like a really good approach. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions at all? Before I steal the limelight again. Okay, I'm going to come in with a question just because I'm really interested, because this is something that I've recently wrote about. And I know you mentioned this, Emily, when you were talking about kind of how young people influence, whether that's the governance, the study, the project itself. I just wondered if you might be able to expand more on how you overcame kind of young people's perceptions of inaction and how that influenced them and their engagement with the project. And I know you mentioned you had to be kind of really transparent around what they could influence, but I just wondered how you kind of went about navigating the kind of ethics around that and thinking about how young people can influence kind of the project itself and the kind of limits around that. I just wondered if you could expand more on it, because I'm just interested in that kind of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that I struggle with personally in my role, because my whole role is to advocate for young people within the project. But I am, in some ways, I have a lot of power. Like, I'm able to vote on the steering committee. I have more power than my boss, Mina, because she only has half a vote. She shares it with, you know, but then I've sort of seen, like, personally, that a lot of things then don't get taken to steering committee, so I don't get the chance to vote on it. And I definitely came into the study myself thinking that the YPAG would have more influence than it does. And I think it's mainly around when I was appointed to position and when they were able to bring in all of us as a team, because I started in mid-January and I was the first person in Oxford to sort of start on it. So we didn't sort of get the ball up and rolling until a bit later, and also the condensed nature of the project. You know, they designed an app in a few months instead of a few years. So the ability to change things by way of lots of different sort of just project things hasn't been able to happen, and that's been a struggle for me. I think in terms of the YPAG itself, I've been really honest with them about what I'm doing and like what I did and didn't know, because when I started the group, I didn't fully understand what pilot study was, and I had to learn and then tell them about it. So I think just being really transparent and also encouraging them to criticize us or voice, even if it's just a feeling, like they're like, oh, I just feel a bit weird about this, because I spend a lot of time sort of being like, that doesn't feel quite right, but I don't have the language or academic knowledge, or, you know, I don't even have a degree. Like, I really don't feel particularly fluent in a lot of the language and protocols that are around this stuff. So voicing that they have a feeling and then working out where that's coming from and whether it's something we can change or not. And, you know, for a lot of their ideas and a lot of their feelings, the answer is it will go in the big stack of feedback that we're sending to the Wellcome Trust to tell them how to do this in the future, which is unfortunate. because we weren't able to implement some of the brilliant ideas into the app and things like that. But contextualizing it like that, reminding them that that's where it's going is important. I think once we've got to that point, they are quite happy, but also to a certain extent still trying to be really aware of whether there is any give despite the limitations.
That's really, really interesting. Thank you.
And I think just to add to what Emily said, there has been some effort to kind of collect and process the feedback even on the study. Like, yes, like Emily said, some of it like gets reserved for the future data bank kind of implementation, and it will all go as feedback there. But so the kind of route now is that youth advisors feedback to Emily, and Emily shares it via Airtable with the wider team. And there is some provision in that system for them, and the people that receive the feedback have to then respond to the feedback. They have to say, well, have we actioned it? Have we not able to action it? If so, why couldn't we? And that gets fed back to the youth advisors. And we did do like a feedback session where we went through all of their feedback and then figured out actually which were the ones that were actually taken up, how much wasn't, and what was it not why was it not taken up, and things like that. And I think that keeping that kind of dialogue also helps, I think.
Definitely, yeah. I think that kind of maintaining feedback loops is so important when you're working with young people in research, and that's what I've found definitely through what I've been doing as well. So no, it's really, really positive to hear that that's kind of a process that you've embedded throughout your project. Does anyone else have any questions at all for the MindKind study group? We've probably got time for a couple more. I mean, I've always got questions, but I don't want to hog the floor again. Michael.
Yeah, sorry to come back. I was just a very quick one. You mentioned that you obviously got a lot of applicants for relatively few positions on the group. What was your kind of approach to people that didn't get on the group? Was there another way that they could remain involved, or yeah, how did you kind of manage that?
So we gave everybody who applied the option of staying on a wait list, and the recruitment that I've just done to add participants. So we added 6 participants to the group, making it 15 in total now, and we had 9 of the old members stay on. So they had the option of ticking yes to remaining on the wait list if places became available, and that's been helpful for us from that point of view, but it also meant that they remained in contact with us. They also had an option of ticking if they were happy to be contacted about other projects within the department, and we have actually used that to recruit for, I think we've sent, you know, names out with their permission to other projects that have that they've then gone on to sort of be involved in other things. And the people who remained on the wait list were able, a lot of them were actually able to be included in the qualitative side of our study. So they've come for the sort of one session that they do get compensated for, and we do an in-depth talk around different governance models. I've been running those along with Anne-Marie in Cambridge, and that's been really they found it really interesting to be able to get involved, and there's been a lot of appetite to get involved again from them, which has been lovely.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. I've got another question around kind of safeguarding. And I just wondered if you had any kind of thoughts about how, I guess, using an online platform differed to maybe having kind of more face-to-face interaction with young people, and if there were kind of any safeguarding concerns that you had and how you overcame those, and yeah, just any thoughts and feedback around that and using online platforms, and whether that kind of had a different, or it was different in that context compared to kind of offline engagement with young people.
Sure, I can do this one. Yes, so I think an important part of that was the ID verification process that we conducted. We didn't store any of that ID information because that's a whole kind of, it needed a whole other process for us to be able to do that. But but we did check that everyone everyone's ID documents matched the information that they shared with us, and we also checked their location, like so they had a proof of current address they had to give, and so we did that. Another member of the team, not Emily, we usually did that with the youth advisor, so there was that separation. So we did that verification. We also made sure that at least one other team member was present with Emily throughout all of the sessions, and there was kind of live monitoring, so that while Emily was free to focus on the facilitation, someone else was kind of keeping their eyes and ears open for safeguarding issues. We also collected details of emergency contacts from all of the advisors, and their names and their relationship and how they were related to the advisor, and contact details for them. And we were very transparent with them. We let them know that if they dropped off a call, very abruptly, and they did not respond to follow-up attempts, then we will contact their emergency contacts to make sure that they were fine. And yeah, so these were some of the issues that we escalation protocols that we came up with. We also regularly met to debrief after the sessions. That would depend on who was co-facilitating with Emily, of course, but we did kind of go over that again, over the session again, to make sure that there wasn't anything we missed out, and if there were any safeguarding concerns, or if there were messages that we received during or after the session, then we would discuss how to deal with that and come up with the appropriate course of action. So that was kind of on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, it's in terms of how it varied virtually and face-to-face, it was a bit harder, I would say, because it's, you're not there with that person, so it's sometimes hard to tell what could be going on that we would need to safeguard this young person from. So we'd had to just be more vigilant, I suppose, and just be very careful, on the whole. I think, just let me know if I missed out on anything, Blossom and Emily.
I would just add, we sent the process for how they would escalate any complaints they had about the team, and also emergency mental health helplines to them in a document before our first session, and how they could let us know if they were in distress during a call. That all went out before our first session, and we did make it very clear, because a lot of people who applied were like, oh, I'm really excited to talk about my experiences, and we were very clear to separate, this isn't therapy, this is your opinions based on your experiences, it's not about your experiences. And yes, we were really clear, actually, from halfway through the application process when we did our shortlist all the way to the beginning of the sessions. There was something else I was going to say, but it's gone now. It comes back to me.
No, I think you covered all the bases there, because we had to ensure that there are these policies in place, because we're working with 16-year-olds, even if you are 24, that these safeguarding measures are in place. I think they're really crucial when you're working with such a varied age group online as well.
I remembered what I was going to say. It was that you sort of, I haven't run sessions like this in person ever, but you miss out on the sort of water cooler talk that you would do. But I think increasingly we join meetings 10 to 15 minutes early, so people can join early and bring things up with us if they want to. And usually, that doesn't, and we stay on a bit later if people want to stay on and chat to us about anything. But usually that has just meant that we have sort of been able to begin those sort of personal relationships with them, and have banter about people's pets is mostly what happens, and that's been really lovely. So I think hopefully that strengthens the kids' ability to be able to come with us if there was something, and also our ability to be able to see if there was something really off in their demeanor, but it is obviously limited by the online space.
No, that's so interesting, really helpful. I was just thinking, because obviously you've got this group of young people from different kind of geographic locations all over the country. So yeah, I can imagine kind of navigating that and thinking about that safeguard and procedure. If anything worse happening was quite a challenge, to say the least. But no, it sounds super interesting. And as you said, Emily, kind of building that rapport as well with the young people, super important to make sure they're able to disclose anything if they needed to, and you're able to follow that. So no, super interesting. Thank you.
I have one-on-ones with them as well every couple months. I book in one-on-ones with everybody.
Amazing. No, that's fab. And yeah, amazing that you've got the resource there to be able to do that as well. So that's really positive. Does anyone else have any final questions at all? No, Rav? Brilliant, that's amazing. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up there. So thank you so much, Emily Blossom and Lakshmi, for joining us today. It's been so great to hear about the work you're doing, and thank you for sharing all the kind of challenges, opportunities that building a youth advisory group like this online, in the online space, has brought to your groups. I know it's been so interesting. Please do keep us in the loop, and we'd be super interested to hear about kind of your findings further down the line as well. So yeah, please do keep in contact. I'm sure we will be in contact as well in the future. So yeah, thank you again from myself and the SMaRteN group.
Thank you for having us, Katie. It's been a pleasure. Some great questions, and yeah, got us to think and share our experiences. Really appreciate it.